All right, welcome back, everyone. This is David Patrick Harry with Church of the Eternal Logos, and today I've got one of our favorite Ortho Bros online, Snek himself. How you doing today, brother?
Doing great, doing great. Always happy. It's St. Vladimir Day.
Welcome back, everyone. This is David Patrick Harry with Church of...
Gotta mute that. Okay, sorry about that. How didn't mean to cut you off there. How you doing today?
St. Vladimir's Day, so pretty happy. This is going to be my patron saint after baptism.
Oh, nice. Have you got word on your baptism or your chrismation? Were you not baptized in the name of the Trinity growing up?
Yeah, actually, I was planning on doing a rechristenation. I was planning to go somewhere and then they would decide, but COVID struck, and yeah, it just sort of ruins the whole plan.
Right. No, same with me. I had a conversation with my priest, and he was wanting to chrismate, and then we had COVID, and he thought it'd just been awkward, and then he actually just retired this past Sunday, so now everything's up in the air. So we'll figure things out, I guess. But that's part of today's conversation is we're going to be hitting on apologetics, your Discord, your experience doing apologetics, and then as both of us as catechumens, although you've been a catechumen much longer than I have, just defending the faith and trying to uphold the faith in general. So a lot of stuff we're going to be covering. But to begin with, how are things over in France right now? Given the sort of pandemic, in my opinion, what are things looking like in regards to the sort of mask compliancy? Is everybody wearing masks right now over there, or how's that looking like?
So the mask wasn't fully mandatory, but now there's new laws, so we have to wear it indoors and also outside. You can get fined if you don't wear one. All the shops are running, in a special COVID-friendly way. So yeah, and they're talking about the second lockdown. So yeah, probably similar to what's happening in the USA right now, if not a little bit worse. And when it comes to church life, we still can get the Eucharist, which is probably the most important part, but they're using wooden, reusable, single-use communion spoon that they later burn because, blood of Christ in there, so you're gonna just throw it away. And they're mandating mask inside the church, which is also bad.
Wow, so the churches are open, but you have to wear a mask to go inside?
Yeah, this is a state requirement. I'm not gonna complain too much because there's a Eucharist, but it's not ideal, obviously.
Right. Yeah. Actually, stirred up a little bit of controversy on Twitter with some of the fellow Orthodox guys because the state that I live in, at least before yesterday, there was no mandatory mask order, and so our parish voluntarily issued mandatory mask, which I was frustrated with, given what my personal beliefs are on these masks and the sort of agenda behind them, and sort of uh, programming people for mandatory requirements to access what we would consider typical features of society, and then it's going to lead towards the digital passport, the vaccination, all that stuff. But oh well. So I am now facing the same thing that you were facing. So what about schools? This is like the hot topic right now over in the U.S. is K through 12 universities are basically trying to do everything online this coming fall. And what's the conversation like over in France regarding all that?
They're not decided yet, but they're trying to plan something. But ultimately, it's France's are waiting for the call of the government, which isn't final yet. But they're thinking of making some stuff online, making people move less and be less together, in close vicinity.
I see. So You said they're already talking about a second lockdown?
In here, yeah.
Oh,
They say it might be planned for, I think October.
wow.
They're already planning it.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, at least where I'm at currently, there is no talks of a second lockdown, but places like California is under lockdown right now. And then the state right next to me, Illinois, they have yet to go to church throughout this whole thing. Churches have been closed since March. And so it's just in the U.S. it's kind of haphazard. States like South Dakota actually have never closed, never locked down. Again, the population is much more sparse, but just the way that they're implementing these things really is a state by state basis. So it's been really interesting. But at least from our side of the pond, France kind of came up in the news in regards to some of those beautiful, beautiful churches burning. And I wanted to get your take before we started getting into the sort of meat of our conversation in regards to the sort of destruction it seems like we're seeing all the time in regards to these beautiful French cathedrals. What is the opinion? What is the take of the French people? Because here, I think most people who are privy kind of assume it has to do with the mass immigration, some of the refugees, potentially people from other faith traditions. I think you know what I mean. And so, what is the response of the French people? Because we never really get that perspective here. And it's like, why aren't the French people upset? Why aren't they doing something? Why aren't they kicking these people out? And so, I'm just curious what your take is on that.
So you're probably talking about the Cathedral of Nantes.
Yes.
So yeah, obviously there's been Notre Dame, which was a huge blow. But people here, I feel most of them are a bit resigned. They don't really think about it. It's just something that happens, and a lot of them do not want to act. That's very sad. That's what you see in the general population. But you have people who still want to fight. But for this cathedral, it's a special blow because it was burned by a criminal. We know it. For example, for Notre Dame, we don't really know what happened. It sounds a bit fishy, but yeah, this one we actually know, and the people who ought to be revolting, are people who own this church, the Catholics, and they've been doing everything to sort of calm this down. Because if you want the full story, I don't know if it reached the rest of the world yet, but the person who did this, who committed this arson, was someone who was serving mass at this church. He was an immigrant from Rwanda, a place in Africa, and he was protected, fed, and so on by the diocese. And the diocese pushed for him to get a passport, and the government refused. And out of desperation, I don't know how desperate you need to be to do that. He burned down the thing. So right now, if you look at the news, and that's what shocks me, there's no indignation. They only interviewed people from the diocese, many of them Catholic, who say, we need to be nice with him and so on. And the bishop even asked the police to be lenient. So yeah, it's a bit weird, but again, we ought to remember these people are tied to the ordinary magisterium of the Pope, which is, had very pro-migrant statements and classified it as a moral imperative. That's very weird, because we're feeling a bit uncomfortable because Catholics, as well as every Christian, should defend this patrimony, and it's churches are burning. And now by people who were literally protected by their church. So it's really bad, but there are anti-Christian acts every day. Just in the last weeks, there's been destruction of stained glass. The relics also of there's been very famous relics that were burnt. From the saint who destroyed the from Saint Boniface, the saint who destroyed the pagan oak of Thor. So yeah, many acts we don't really know what's happening, and it's really bad. The climate is becoming very anti-Christian here.
Right.
Yeah, churchings are being tagged and stuff like this, and of course, the secular media and so on use the fact that that it was a Catholic this time who burned down the church. So now we won't even be able to say, oh, churches are burning, that might be a problem. And the media is right on this point. Like this time it was this dude, but there's a general anti-Christian sentiment, and of course we've got non-autochthonous religions that are pushing. And we gotta cover this because they're attacking the Christians, which are lethargic and do not know the theology and are ignorant of the theology. So Islam itself being an appeal to simplicity, an appeal to people not knowing anything.
Right.
It's just it's very simple. You can make your shahada in 8 seconds. The TikTok religion.
Wow.
So yeah, there are pressures on Christians, I believe, in France today.
Wow, it's really disheartening because that's kind of the way that it's perceived over here. Right now in the United States, given the sort of revolution, the Marxist revolution that's occurring, Catholics are getting the brunt of it. And I think it really is because of the places of worship. At least they have some type of semblance of traditional Christianity. Of course, we would debate their theology, this or that, but just the way the architecture looks, the churches are built. And so it's a very obvious focal point to attack Christendom, to attack the logos, to attack the phallogocentric worldview that Christianity promotes. And it's just been astonishing, the silence from clergy, from the hierarchy within Catholicism here in America. And it's really just laity, it's common people, it's a few Twitter accounts, it's YouTube channels like Taylor Marshall that are just outright vocal about it. And then we're seeing Notre Dame Cathedral burnt down was a year and a half ago, or not burnt down totally, but caught on fire about a year and a half ago. And then the most recent one, it's like, what is going on? And then you look at Britain. Britain is it's hard to tell who's in a worse position. It seems like Britain, but it's hard to tell. But it's just crazy. It's crazy. And the French culture, given your guys' sort of privileging of your language, it seems like you have privileged then your history and the churches and the Catholic roots of everything.
No, we're also very secular.
Yeah.
That's the problem, and of course, the Catholic are prime target, but they're prime target because secularism was a reaction to their interference with worldly politics, and that's why the church has been seen as a tool of power, and that's why it's a prime target. So in that sense, they're reaping they're reaping for some of the errors they've made, but again, the whole of Christianity is targeted. And France has been very secularized. French secularized itself and centralized itself, also in part, to move away from the papacy and to install, its own national church, which failed after the Declaration of Vatican I, and secularism took over. And today, people, I think the biggest problem with these churches that are beautiful, even though they're not Orthodox, is that many people, the general population, sees them as museums, dead stones. And what does St. Peter calls us to be? Living stones.
Right.
And that's a big problem, many people see it as just part of the patrimony and not something that is living.
Wow.
And ultimately, what makes them beautiful is that they were used for worship, is that they used to be living, and today they're just a lot of them are just museums.
Wow.
To a large extent, they're museums, and for days, and then you've got maybe one mass in them. And some of them are deserted, and that's a big problem. And there's so much for us to do, and there are still things that we need to recognize. There are many relics. There are many pieces of art that are, pre-schism and so on. And as Orthodox, it's also part of us and or Apologetics. We're going to see it in a minute. To show this patrimony, this heritage.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, what's the state of BLM in France? Is it popular?
Excuse me, can you repeat?
Like Black Lives Matters, BLM, is it popular over in France like it is in the U.S.?
Okay, so obviously we don't have the same relations with Black people. France, didn't do so much work on racial standards. Metropolitan France, so continental France, abolished any form of slavery in the I think the 13th or 14th century. But the people we have today in France, they're not so much from the places we colonized during the early colonization phase, but more during the late one, so Africa.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of them did not really integrate or are looking for their roots, like many blacks in the US.
Right.
And basically they piggybacked off Black Lives Matter, even though, of course, we don't have such a history of slavery in continental France. We don't have. It's a bit foreign to us, but they adapted it for their own gain, and you see them, pulling back the case of Adama Traoré, which was someone from, let's say, a shady family. Who died in custody of the police, and they still, want new analyses made and so on, new coroner reports, even though it's been 4 years. So yeah, that's they try to put a spin on it, try to put a French spin on it, and they try to import it. But I wouldn't say, the cities are not burning. Only some of the specifically ethnic suburbs.
Right. Well, I guess we can move then from there into sort of main topic, which is apologetics. And I wanted to get your take on a few different things, but I wanted to start with really the uphill battle, I guess, you're describing right now in regards to just doing apologetics within the French language to French people, trying to re-understand Orthodoxy or even Orthodoxy's history within France. And so I was wondering if you could speak about, I believe you have your own Discord server in French, correct?
Yeah, it's exactly the biggest Christian server in France.
Oh, wow. Can you go ahead and speak on that? Like, when exactly did you start getting into apologetics? When did you start your Discord, and how successful has it been?
Yeah, actually, I didn't start it. It's some other people who started. Some people I'm collaborating with. And at the time, I wasn't Orthodox, and they started 3 years ago. And I joined. In the beginning, it was really messy, and there were probably something like 15 people. And I just was interested because I came back from a phase of perennialism, and I wanted to know more about Orthodoxy because I was studying, the idea of the uncreated light, the action of God in the world. So I came there a little bit. I discussed history, and I've made good friends, and we've tried to build this. And at the time, they were embroiled with sedevacantists, with many sedevacantists who were harassing them with pre-made articles.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, okay, I'm going to help you. I'm going to give you a hand. And we've compiled many archives against many arguments. It's then we've contacted a deacon who was managing an Apologetics website, and we started talking to him. We started propose some stuff to him. We got in communication with English speakers, for example, Jay Dyer, with whom we've had very fruitful collaborations. And that's how we started.
Wow.
And today we're closing in on 1,000 people. Yeah.
Wow.
Which is pretty good. Which is that makes us the first apologetics website in terms of Christianity in France.
So I had a few questions going from there in regards to doing apologetics to different groups, but before leaving kind of where we're at, I'm curious what has been the most successful approaches for fellow Frenchmen in terms of apologetics. Where are most of them coming from? I would assume maybe a perennialistic place like you were talking about, maybe a spiritual but not religious, or even an atheistic perspective. Where are most French people that you've kind of dealt with, that you've evangelized to, where are they coming from? What have been some of the successful approaches that you found?
Okay, so there are many. I'd say most will come from the Catholic world to an extent, but we have converts from Protestantism, Oriental Orthodoxy, all the branches of Islam, atheism, all the secular religions. So I wouldn't say there are specific ones. And of course, we're also re-evangelizing some, Orthodox people, like cradle Orthodox who never got catechized to an extent. But I'd say probably from the Catholic side, because they're already Christian, they already understand tradition, so you can have a contact.
Right.
You can have a basis on which to work on. For Protestants, it's going to be harder because you need to make them accept that there's something extra biblical. It's not hard. The argument is not hard. It's very easy, but it's hard to break the ice.
Right.
But yeah, I'd say most of them will come from Roman Catholicism, and especially from the more trad perspectives. Because if you look at what we call the conciliar Catholics, they will be trained to never doubt the Pope, just be in communion. Everything will be okay, just be in communion. There's an apparition here, an apparition here. That means it's a true thing, and it's don't ask questions. So you cannot bring stuff. You cannot bring up history because they will be practicing some form of pietism. They will be very attached to the newer, more marketed saints. Padre Pio is especially popular, or the new apparitions, Fatima and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So these people, it's a bit harder, but you can there's still some contact that you can do, you can engage with. But the most successful will probably be the traditional Catholics and the Sedevacantists, because they're honest, because they're looking to find the church, and because they're using criticism, because they're able to see, if something is going really bad in the papacy, if you have an infallible contradiction or something like this, they will already be able to say, oh, something's wrong. We should investigate history, and you can talk about history. You can come and explain, and we have great. We have great fathers about this. I'm not saying he's a church father, but Vladimir Goethe was a forerunner in this sense. Abbe Goethe. He asked the questions and so on about the French history, and one of the best way we have to start, making people think. Because Catholics usually don't know much about the first millennium. So one of the best, and the history of the first millennium is also more blurry, because many, you have more secondary historians coming, adding layers of, falsehoods, forgeries, and so on. So one of the best way we proceed is to use the Gallicans, because the Gallican Church held to Roman Catholic theology, but in terms of its ecclesiology, it was pretty much autocephalous and linked to the king. So that's why, it's also popular. We also have successes in the royalist milieu, monarchists and so on, because we explain the role of the king. And obviously, many royalists ask themselves the question. A lot of them will default trad, but sometimes they ask themselves the question, what if the king, which of course you want to be based and right-wing and so on,
right,
is in disagreement with the Pope, which is paused. So they ask themselves the question, and they, of course, as a Catholic, you ultimately have to follow the Pope,
right?
The king.
Right.
That's also another way to go about it. But recently, we've had a huge success with a Sedevacantist parish, an anti-Sedevacantist parish converted to Orthodoxy.
A whole parish did.
Yeah.
Oh wow! Can you speak a little bit about that? That seems quite hopeful then, at least
Yeah,
at a small scale.
I mean, some months ago, someone joined, anonymously, and we discussed, and he knew Latin. Oh, you know Latin? That's great. So we asked him to translate some of our work. We were very open, and he seemed nice, and we showed him, Goethe, Döllinger, like like good historians that talk about this and the evolution of the papacy, and um, and this person was like, yeah, this is interesting, and he basically converted, but he said, do not make it public, and we didn't understand why. Do not make it public, and later on, we realized that this person was a priest. He was a Sedevacantist priest who helped us translate stuff, and we realized all this, and basically he told us, I had all the cards in my game. I just need to realize what was there. I just needed to rearrange them. And I thought that Goethe was just, a low-level polemicist, but he wasn't, And Döllinger, he didn't convert to Orthodoxy, but he was very serious, and he also exposed many of the forgeries. And we're working with this person, and his entire parish is composed of people who are young, well-educated, and they're helping us right now for apologetics. They're learning, they're in the process of leaving the baggage, which is good, because they take this step, which is fundamental.
Right.
And they're going to help us in apologetics. So that's an entire parish, something like 20 odd people. Yeah.
Oh wow, that's great, man. That's really great. I mean, when you're talking about leaving the baggage, that's true for anybody who gets into Orthodoxy. I feel like because it's a different phronema, it's a different paradigm to sort of get into, especially if you've grown up in the West of any sort. Even if you're French or grow up in a sort of Enlightenment Protestant nation like America, you have to really understand the paradigm to get into it. And so I was curious then what your opinion would be, because we got some great fellow ortho bros. Somebody like comes to mind, like an Eugen. His name's Eugene. He's actually moderating the chat right now, but he's been starting a bunch of Orthodox Telegram channels, really trying to promote different Telegram channels in different languages, be it German, Portuguese, Spanish, or so on. And he has a new one called the Holy League, where it's not so much on ecumenicism, but more of a socio-political alliance between trad Catholics and Orthodox. And so I'm curious, given what you were just talking about with the Asceti parish actually converting to Orthodoxy, do you think there is, what's your opinion on sort of forming alliances at this point? Because it seems like some of the cultural revolution that's happening is, at least here in the U.S., it's happening so fast that it feels like if we don't unite in some fashion and then work out our theological differences later, that the divide and conquer strategy is going to overtake us. And so what's kind of your thoughts on that?
I mean, yeah, there needs to be alliances to an extent, but history teaches us that we shouldn't, give blank checks.
Sure.
So I believe that we have a way to go forward. For example, against abortion, in terms of culture war and so on. We have a way to go about this. However, there are entire parts of the culture war that it would not be possible. For example, in France, regarding migration, regarding the ecology stuff, like Roman Catholic who follows the Pope. I'm not talking about the trads because they are sort of not following him, or the Sedevacantists.
Right.
But yeah, they will not be able to follow us there, and that's a problem. At least if they follow the magisterium, which a lot of them do not.
Right.
So ultimately, that's going to be a problem. Sedevacantists, ultimately it's going to be another problem, because a lot of them are very extremist. A lot of them are like nut jobs who will excommunicate you and tell you're going to hell. Anyway, so but I believe there's something to do with the trad world. There is something to do, but ultimately, our kingdom is not of this world, and we shouldn't relinquish evangelism for this. Like, there are still real problems that needs to be ironed out, and I personally believe that the only system that will work perfectly would be an Orthodox one, especially in France. The idea of political autocephaly for the church, that's a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, the idea of union, Davidic alliance between the leader and the church, even though it's not going to happen because not an Orthodox president in a non-secular state.
Right.
But I think that ultimately this is the only thing that will work. So I'm not against making alliances, but I'm against giving blank checks.
Right. Well, I know here in the U.S., a lot of people are expecting a sort of balkanization process, a fragmentation, a breaking up of the United States into really separate nations. And so, at least having my sort of ear to the ground, I've heard a lot of traditional Christians moving to the Northwest, the Idaho, the Wyoming, the Montana region, stuff like that, even the Dakotas, in the hopes of when that process happens, they would have a sort of unified culture, albeit maybe a hodgepodge of different denominations. But Orthodoxy is just so small in the U.S. that forming a sort of separatist state, monarchy, as some people dream about, I just don't see how it's possible, given how small the numbers are and how easily it'd be able to be overtaken by any opposing force with much greater numbers. But do you see similar processes in France in regards to potential breakup or fragmentation of a sort of unified France, like I think a lot of people are expecting in the United States?
I think this fragmentation is happening, but more on the regional level and with the European Union. So it's a fragmentation inside a more globalist entity. I don't believe people will do their own commune or want to do their this kind of community stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think so. And there's also you need to keep in mind there's also way less state. I mean, there's less area to cover.
Right.
So I don't see this happening. I think right now we need to think about immigration and the people that are immigrants that are already here. I think that's in the US you have this opportunity. I think in France that's our main worry right now in terms of Christian culture and European culture.
Right. Now, what do you know what the demographic percentages are right now in France? Like the French population versus minority populations. Do you have a rough estimate of that?
No, because these kind of statistics are forbidden by law in France.
Oh, they are. Wow.
Yeah, so they're forbidden by law. You cannot do this on ethnicity and religion. It's completely forbidden. So sometimes you have foreign companies that do estimates, but yeah, it's pretty bad. Some people manage to estimate this because there are some diseases that needs to be that are linked specifically to people that come from North Africa or South Africa actually. So this disease need to be tested, but only on this part of the population. So some manage to come with some rough estimates. There's also the Islamic names, because like the names, like we can track the names, and of course Islamic names are able to be tracked. But again, that doesn't cover all of the immigrants. That doesn't cover all of the entries in the country, and there's also the fact that the immigration number don't say much because a lot of it is legal, and a lot of it are people who were here for generations. So I think there's probably roughly I'd say something like 20%, 25% of the population that's minority.
Wow.
If you go to some places in some cities, you won't see anything. But yeah, you won't see anything in terms of French people, like French people. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I've heard people, Westerners, people, Americans, I guess specifically, going to Paris and are kind of stunned by what they see. That it's not the sort of 1950s, 60s France, Paris, France that people envision, or that it's kind of poetically written about in America as this kind of idyllic place to be. And the crime, the demographics, the no-go zones, and stuff like that are kind of shocking to people.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. In terms of this, it's really bad here. For example, during the COVID crisis, during Ramadan, the cops had specific orders not to interrupt any celebration of the Ramadan, of the Eid, which of course broke the COVID laws. So yeah, it's bad, and at the same time, they closed down the churches for Easter. So yeah, there is some level of complacency and complicity from the government, and a lot of people feel really betrayed in this regard.
Yeah, I would imagine so. Actually, Eugen just threw in a super chat directed at your way. I might as well just read it real quick. He said, God bless you both. Great stream. I'm wondering, will you ever create an Orthodox YouTube channel in the French language or even English? And he's talking to you.
Okay. So I do not own one specifically because I'm still a catechumen, and we're gonna look at the rules for being a catechumen in a moment.
Yep.
So I do not feel I can do it yet, but I have YouTube channels that are part of the Discord where we upload debates and we send them on demand, and we also have a YouTube channel that linked to the Apologetics website that's held by our deacon. Where we upload videos and articles. So these are in French. I'm planning to do a channel. There's a demand. I heard you. Don't worry. I don't know how to make videos. I'll learn. It's going to be pretty minimalistic in the beginning. But yeah, I'm planning to do one, and I think in English. I think I'll probably do more English stuff. Yeah. I'll keep the French stuff to the other channel.
Excellent. So I wanted to get your take. You said that one of your most successful sort of evangelism prospects was towards the traditional Catholics there in France. What? Because we've spoke privately, and you're quite sophisticated in regards to history. I think that's kind of your most ideal methodology, correct? So so I was curious, what do you have any advice for fellow Orthodox, some of the young guys, whether they've grown up Orthodox, converted, they've already been chrismated, and what is your advice on a sort of successful apologetic approach to fellow Catholics, whether it be their friends or family members or whatnot?
First, there are general rules to be in apologetics that do not apply only for apologetics regarding Roman Catholics. You need to leave your baggage. That's something many of us don't do properly. I didn't do properly in the beginning. I understood later. You have to not be alone, because by definition, theological concepts, you need to understand them from several angles to fully grasp them, and something needs to be explained to you several times. So surround yourself with good people and clergy, because there are canons that say that we shouldn't do apologetics, talk about the faith for something like 3 years, and obviously we are not held to. They fully apply, but canons are to be seen by clergy. So you need to try to get some clergy behind you, at least for them to interpret the canon in a way that is favorable to you, and keep from you making mistakes, because you're going to make mistakes in the beginning. So that's the thing you need to understand. Some of the principles for apologetics is that you do not convert people. God converts people. So you are not here to reap. Most of the time, you are here to sow. So sometimes people will come to you and be fully ready, or they have done their research. They just want, just a little tap. They're going to be ripe and so on. I'm going to use, agricultural metaphors because that's what the Bible does.
Right.
You're here to sow, and sometimes your victory will not be to reap something. It just be to plant a seed, And that's what happened with this church. We had no idea who this person was, but we were nice to him, and we just sent him some documentation. We explained to him some of the principles, and that's our parish converting. So that's the thing. You're not doing it for yourself. You're not doing it for glory. It's not a headhunt. You give what people need, and sometimes that also means, more sadly, that you shouldn't waste your time on some people. There are some people who will not want, who are not ready, who are not in the right dispositions. So just plant your seed and go away. That's in the Bible. Don't cast pearls in front of swines. Not so nice verse, but it's here for a reason.
Right.
That's the things you need to understand. So sometimes Catholics, so now going on to specifically Catholics, sometimes Catholics will be seeing you as something foreign, and you need to understand, you need to tell them, you see, Western civilization, it's us as well. It's us. And actually, many of the things that came later, for example, the scholastic understanding, it's influenced by the Arabs. A lot of it is also influenced by paganism. A lot of the stuff that were added caused a problem. Mm-hmm. You can try to show them that the Protestant Reformation happened for a reason. A lot of the ideas of the Protestant came from Roman Catholicism. We talked about it today, actually. There was a group of Roman Catholics who were complaining to the Protestant about them not having infant baptism. And we explained that actually they took this logic from you because you do not have pedo communion. So you need to be understanding. You need to show that you're not foreign. You're also here to defend some level of tradition. You're here to defend some coherence. For example, the royalist will want an idea of France that is independent, that is centralized under a king. You can explain to them that the entire Merovingian dynasty was especially Orthodox in the understanding of the church, be it in terms of ecclesiology and dogma. Again, I would say, in France, people will get offended very quick. There's no culture of debate, so you shouldn't go to topics that are too controversial at first, because literally people, they do not want to debate. They will wait for you to take one step too far and call another dominem on you. So you should try to explain. We've got some things that is historically present. We've got some things that is authentic, and Rome degraded it. And sometimes, I think today, except if you're like really crazy, there is no Roman Catholics that do not have grievances with their church, be it the state it was today or in history. So you can show them, and that's the thing that's interesting. A lot of the time, everything people don't like is after the schism. Everything that's criticized, Crusades, Inquisition, papal supremacy, over focus on the Theotokos. Many people will have some problems with this, and you can explain. You see, there's something right in what you have, but it's not fully right because it was added, or it degraded, or it was removed, or you're missing something, and we have the completeness of it. And there are many ways to go about it. For example, many people will be fascinated with iconography, and we explain the icons. And I made an excellent live with Jay Dyer about this, because the icon, it has the entire theology behind it, and it's only coherent within the Orthodox theology.
Right.
And only the Orthodox iconographic tradition is that old, antique, and changed. People will be interested by mysticism, and of course, mysticism is especially important for us. And you need to explain that this is linked also to our theology of regeneration. It's impossible to have this mixed with, hyper-Augustinianism. It's linked to the energies. So there are many ways to go about it. History is a great point as well. Liturgy. Today, many Catholics are yearning for an authentic liturgy. And the most authentic one they have is from the 15th century.
Right.
16th century, sorry. Yeah, the Tridentine Latin Mass. So there are many ways to go about it. But you need to show that you're here not as an aggressor, but as someone who wants to give something that's fuller. And oftentimes that's a problem in apologetics. People will get angry very quickly, especially in France, because people are very ecumenistic. People will hate you for believing what your church says. People will completely forget at times what used to be the magisterium of the church and what still is.
Right.
So that's a huge problem. I think you need to be polemical, but not always. You need to be polemical where it counts. Church fathers are polemical. Being polemical is fine. It's good. But you need to answer the specific needs of the people, and that's very hard to gauge. Sorry.
Right. No, I think that is a great word of wisdom in regards to the way that we approach our apologetics. My experience has been a little bit different because mostly I've been inundated with people who are atheists or the spiritual not religious, or they're into psychedelics or magic. And so I personally haven't dealt much with Catholics or Protestants per se, but mostly people that are kind of coming out of the worldview that I came out of into Orthodoxy. But when you're talking about not making it too polemical, not making it too adversarial, I think sometimes it gets that way just because of some of the online culture, that it easily frames things as very adversarial between Catholics and Orthodox, or Protestant and Orthodox, and this or that, and that the way we engage people is also going to say a lot about our own theology. And so I think that is a really, really wise advice that you're given there.
Yeah. But again, sometimes it's needed, and the problem is sometimes people will get mad without you being adversarial. For example, just using the term heresy, oh, this is heretical. People will say, oh, you want to kill me. So that's a problem. So you also have to frame it, because some people will come to you thinking we're in full communion with the exact same thing, everybody's going to heaven. And like, okay, I'm not going to take definitive steps in salvation, but we are told that there is one church, one boat. God judges, but that's not for us to decide. So we have the fullness of it, and sometimes it's really hard not to, for example, the term brother. Someone will say, oh, we're brothers in Christ, and that's very common from the Catholics. We say we're brothers, and then they will be completely mean to the Protestants, and we have to explain to them, you see, you do not have the same opinion, therefore you're not part of the same communion, therefore you cannot be considered brothers in the fullest sense. Right. That's one of the things you literally have to explain to people. Like, we actually believe in different things, and we believe that all beliefs matter.
Right.
That's actually a huge problem.
Right.
That you need to engage with. So sometimes you need conversation is to be nice, but we also have father. We explain that sometimes people can be hurt, but ultimately it's better that they be hurt and saved. I'm not saying go ahead and annoy everybody. I'm saying point out the things where it needs to be pointed out. And sometimes people will be adversarial to you, and you also have a right to answer in terms of apologetics. The fathers, a lot of the dogmatic documents we have are polemical in nature.
Right.
So it's also a good manner, and people also want to feel protected in that church, to have the dogma. And especially when talking to Catholics, a lot of them will, everything crumble around them, and they'll just say, oh, we got the keys, it's fine. So you need to also give them a sense of security. Mm-hmm. That's very important. Or dogma is fine, or church is not going to crumble. The corruption of one person will not destroy your entire church.
Right.
They need to understand this. They need to feel secure. And there are other inquirers that need to feel secure in your dogma. For example, the Muslim inquirers. We're going to talk about this in a few minutes, but Muslim inquirers, they are apostate from Islam.
Yeah, that's actually where I was wanting to go next. Is again, you're inundated in a culture and a scenario a little bit even foreign for America. We do not have a high Muslim population. There are areas that are concentrated. Take parts of Michigan, parts of Minnesota. Minnesota has a whole Somali area. It's basically a little Somalia. But what is your experience doing apologetics and evangelizing to Muslims? Generally speaking, what has been successful? What are some of the common questions, or at least their approach in trying to understand Orthodoxy?
Attack. So most of them, you need to be very strong. They come from a religion and a civilization that is based on attacking people. The theology, most of them do not know the theology. The only thing they know about their theology is that it's not the Trinity. So you need to attack, and you need to give a feeling of protection also for the people who are converting from Islam. They need to feel protected because under Islamic law, they are to be killed. So you need to show that you have good arguments. And sometimes what works with Muslims is, in my experience, is to find the leader and to completely destroy him, to completely ravage him. Because, these people, they're paid to do this, they're working like an army, and they will appeal to the soldiers. And the arguments will mostly be bad. It will be either them trying to do another exegesis of our Bible, or it will be them appealing to simplicity. And actually, we are Orthodox are very well placed against them, because one of our fathers of reference is Saint John of Damascus. He invented apologetics against Islam before Islam was stabilized. So that's one of the most important things. You need to be able to protect the Bible and say, okay, you do not do apologetics, you do not do your own exegesis of our text. You need to be able to protect it. You need to be able to remind them the Quran, it's supposed to be a perfect and created text. So this, apologetic and textual criticism will be more damaging for the Muslims than it can ever be to you. Because when you do apologetics, you need to attack what is infallible. Because if what is infallible, if what is a mark of God in the world fails, it's game over.
Right.
So whatever is infallible is an insta-kill. So for the Quran, it's very easy to target. For Catholics, it's also interesting. Because papal declarations that are infallible, there's no discussion. If you can prove that there's infallible error, or that they infallibly need to do something they don't want to do, infallibly believe in some things that they don't want to believe in, it's also very easy.
Right.
Go for conclusive arguments. So with the Muslim, you need to be able to protect the Bible and to give theological arguments, because they do not know their own theology. And the problem with Islam is that since they have a God that is absolutely simple, he cannot even enter the world. That's why Muhammad didn't receive revelation directly from God. It needed to go through an angel and a book.
Right.
And the only time where he met God, he had to physically move out of creation. That's the mirage. Right. So you need to go through theology. In terms of theology, they're not good. They will get smashed quite easily. We had some debates with very good ones, very famous ones in France, and it just ended up with me explaining the idea of attributes, and them saying, okay, attributes are God. They say attributes are not the essence, but not anything else than the essence, which is sort of consubstantiality. So at the end of the day, they will admit a distinction in God, especially if they are from the Ashari Maturidi schools, which most are, most of the Sunni. Then they cannot say that the Trinity is polytheism. Otherwise, the attributes of Allah will be other gods.
When you're doing apologetics to these Muslims, are they open to a logically reasoned argument where you show, again, you're talking about really you need to attack the text, you need to attack the Quran because that's really the foundation of their worldview. When you do show them something, are they? I mean, how do they typically respond? Because my experience, even just generally speaking with anybody, coming from a different worldview, it's few and far between individuals who are actually honest enough to engage and see something and say, and then make a course correction. A lot of times they'll just ignore it or they'll refuse to see what you're saying. So, what has your experience been, generally speaking?
Okay, Muslims will be very gregarious, so they will not put themselves back into consideration until you beat the leader. Usually you will see there's a sort of a clinic stuff, and they will have leader that they follow, and they will not think by themselves. They will think, they will follow the leader in as much as they feel secured. Converts from Islam are relatively rare. A lot of them go through some phases. First of all, they will start to deny a part of the tradition because hadith are especially violent. Sometimes mostly people convert from Islam for moral reason. So some of them will try to remove the hadith, or so they will become Quranist or something. Then they will move towards Mu'tazila school, because they will ask themselves questions about the Quran, and they will not believe it's uncreated. Or sometimes they will just switch to a more peaceful religion. Sometimes they go towards atheism directly, and then they're just fed up from every religion. It's very hard to find them back. But sometimes they will go to more peaceful religion, and that's where we have to show that not only we can give a model of society that's not barbaric as Orthodox, but we also are able to protect people, theologically. We're not. The regular Christian world is very lukewarm. In France, be it Catholics and some of the Protestants are very lukewarm. Yeah. So that would be my advice with Muslims. They're very gregarious, they're very aggressive. You need to be able to fight back, and that's how they will respect you as well.
Right.
A Muslim will never respect you if you're too lukewarm with him.
Right.
You need to attack, give arguments, fight back, and I actually have decent relations with some Muslims because I was able to tell them, where to stop.
Right.
And they actually respect that. It's also part of the culture.
Right. Well, that's great advice. Have you specifically evangelized or done apologetics to any Hindus or Buddhists?
No, they're not so common.
Yeah.
You'll find more like probably some neo-pagans on the internet.
Right.
And some people in the New Age stuff. But again, the New Age stuff is very interesting in terms of Orthodoxy. That's your thing.
Right.
Because they already admit the existence of something that's metaphysical.
Right.
For the atheist, you first need to make him accept the metaphysical.
Exactly.
The New Ager already knows this, and then you can try to make him the need for an absolute God. Try to make him understand the importance of incarnation. Of course, you need a personal God. You need an incarnated God, and the energies. Right. The action of God. So that's more your stuff. But right. Yeah, I've been using a mix of what Jay does against atheists and what you're doing against New Agers, but there are not so many. Another group I might want to talk about are the Protestant. We have many evangelicals. A lot of them are coming from Africa, and it's very, very hard to discuss. And then you've got also the remnants of all the French, more classical Protestant sects, but a lot of them will devolve to modalism and it's just a big mess. Mm-hmm. So for them, it's hard. They will back whatever they think is right with Scripture. So you need to go to move to understanding tradition, and sometimes it'll be very hard to talk to,
Right.
Because ultimately you can only discuss what you have in common with someone. what he accepts.
Mm-hmm.
That's why with Muslims, there's no point in comparing Bible to Quran, because you do not accept the Quran, you does not accept the Bible.
Right.
And that's the rule for any good apologetics, to go toward what this person believes and use his sources. So yeah,
right.
Ultimately, what you have in common is what will matter most. Of course, you can go dig into hadith and so on, but
Right.
if you want to convert someone to Orthodoxy, to
Right.
like make someone relinquish their previous religion and convert to Orthodoxy directly, you need to go to what you have in common. For the Protestants, it's going to be the Bible, so you need to give your exegesis of the Bible, and you're gonna need to show that the Bible has a tradition.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot just come and say, "Oh, tradition." You also have to show that your system works with Scripture.
Right.
Because that's what the Church Fathers say.
Right.
What we believe in, it needs to be ultimately present in Scripture. For the Muslim, you can only go to philosophy. For the Jews, you can go to the Old Testament, but that's few and far between. They don't convert that easily. For the Catholics, you have access to the entire first millennium of tradition, so that's where you can have the most contact. We had some contact with Orientals. I know like an Oriental Orthodox who converted, because we discussed Saint Cyril and the Cappadocians. That's more David Zorin Medwhite's thing. But something that's good is to show that Saint Cyril, if you interpret it in a monophysite way, it's divorcing it from the rest of his works, where he admits to natures, and it's divorcing him from the rest of the church. For example, the Cappadocians, they're fully diaphysite. That's something that works. But again, this will be more ethnic as well. For example, Copts will mostly be Egyptians, and it's going to be more about Egypt. But we've had some Armenians who converted. That's very interesting, because the Armenian church is something a bit different. They're very nationalistic,
right?
But in terms of theology, they're closer to us. And there's actually used to be many reunion councils between our two churches. For example, under St. Photios. So that's something that worked, because we also have someone as a server who speaks Armenian and who has Armenian heritage. And that's another point that I pointed out before. You need to be surrounded by people.
Right.
And not everybody can have the same, you will complete one another.
Right.
That's the thing. You have people who will be better in history, you have people who will be better in philosophy, theology, more efficient against Copts, Armenian, Protestants. And oftentimes, people who came from these specific non-Orthodox religions, right, they can give a specific testimony as well.
Agreed. I think that is such wise advice, and why sort of the Burgoning Orthodox, I don't know, I guess you could say community here online. I think of somebody like Arush, like you mentioned, Armenian Orthodox, of course, just all the different Ortho bros, David the Real Medwhite, Jay Dyer, Father Deacon Ananias, yourself, that it is a really unique conglomeration of different abilities, different talents that are useful. And so finding community, and that's why I think some of these Telegram channels that, guys are getting together, again, just like you described with your Discord, Jay's Discord, that this is very helpful for people, and finding that community. And then really that translates then in finding a real church, a real parish that you actually go to, a real spiritual community, a real spiritual father. Orthodoxy isn't just intellectual or this thing online. You actually have to go to church and find a parish, again, and find a community to be a part of. So moving on, let's talk about being a catechumen. So I'm curious, I want you to go over the canons and what the canons talk about. I know for myself, I feel very fortunate that my parish has clergy that is very supportive of what I'm doing. Again, we've had long private conversations about theology, so they know where my head is and what I'm thinking and what I'm trying to do with my YouTube channel and the sort. So whether it be my priest, who again, unfortunately, but I guess we should also celebrate that he just retired. So shout out to you, Father Athanasius. Congratulations for a wonderful career. a wonderful ministry, a wonderful. He actually started the parish that I go to. So, but with that being said, I do what I do through the okay of Subdeacon Mark, through my priest. Again, I'll be getting a new priest, so I'll have to go over this whole thing, exactly what I'm doing online. But could you go over, again, you've been a catechumen for a while. This whole COVID thing has really delayed both of our chrismations into the church. But can you go over being a catechumen, how exactly you defend the faith as a catechumen? I know some of us, myself, Dyer, when he was a catechumen, I believe yourself have been attacked by somebody like a Jonathan Hill, who, sort of vicious that if you're not taking the Eucharist, you're not allowed to say anything about Orthodoxy, which is also to another extreme that we could kind of disregard. But could you just go ahead in regards to talking about being a catechumen, defending the faith, and then the criticisms that sort of come one's way when they begin that process?
Yeah, so it's a calling, and ultimately we have a clergy, and it's for the clergy to decide. There are canons that say that you ought not to talk about the faith for 3 years for good reasons, because some people might not be prepared, and some people start without being prepared. That's bad. So you need to have clergy behind you to supervise what you're doing and to tell you, no, this is wrong. You need to accept this. Some people will lose a baggage over a matter of years. Some will be ready and will lose it in a matter of months. But that's it's another thing. So yeah, technically we ought not to be doing this, but we have clergy behind us. We have clergy that can vouch for us. I do not believe we give any heretical teachings. Actually, one of the things that surprised me, and one of the biggest lessons I received regarding the unity of the church, is when we discovered Mr. Dyer, because when we just had the church father, we just worked primarily from St. John of Damascus, but also most of the dogmatic fathers, and we realized that we were exactly on the same line as Dyer in terms of theology, without any consulting. That's very good. So you need to work from material. You do not bring your own ideas. You do not innovate. You learn and you teach what you've learned. Exactly. Nothing is added, nothing is removed. That's the important lesson, and that's why you need clergy to be behind you, and that's why you can do this, because your clergy is blessing you for doing this. It's always great. We have many people that are here helping us. We have the luck to be blessed by our deacon, who's a Ukrainian in France, who's been doing very good apologetics, but also Father Dr. Deacon Ananias and all these great people. That's why it's good.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know I'm very thankful for everybody, and I've learned so much from watching other people's content. So I feel indebted to each other, that it's really a great community, and just kind of glad to be a part of it in one way or another, and also, like you said, get the condoning to do what all of us are doing by our clergy, by our spiritual leaders. But I had one more topic I wanted to get into. We've already gone over an hour. I mentioned I was just trying to keep you an hour and then maybe get into some super chats. But there's another thing I wanted to get into in regards, and I probably should have brought it up in the beginning, but a lot of the Christian guys online in America are trying to figure out how to homestead. This seems like where a lot of people are going with, again, just to get your opinion on. We're seeing the mandating of the mask. A lot of people think this is leading to a vaccination, potentially microchipping. I think that's quite clear. I don't even think it's a conspiracy at this point. Articles are already being put out in regards to international travel. It's going to be documented by implantable microchips. Again, some people try to relate this back to Revelation and the mark of the beast, this or that. I know as Orthodox, we're very hesitant to go in that direction, as opposed to maybe some of the more evangelical and Protestant brothers and sisters among us. But what is your thoughts on homesteading? This is something that I've actually been advocating. This is something that I'm trying to, when I get in a position to embark upon, is actually buy land and live off the land. Buy enough land that you can grow your food, you can get in partnership with fellow farmers, buy half a cow, buy a whole cow if you want. Then you got your meat, you got all this stuff. And as traditional Christians, basically trying to find a parish that's within driving distance or whatever, however means that you travel with, and then living off the land, because it seems like if we're going to refuse some of these things that are going to be mandated, we're not going to be able to participate in society generally speaking. And it really feels like that's going to be the case in this country. I would assume that that's also going to be the case in France. But I just wanted to get your opinion on that perspective. Do you think that France is moving in a similar direction? And what are your thoughts about people trying to build homesteads and live more sustainable lifestyles off the land in general? Again, like you were talking about with the agricultural analogies and metaphors regarding the Bible, it seems like this is kind of the way in which we're supposed to live anyways, as opposed to the hustle and bustle of living inside these really satanic and demonic cities. So kind of a long-winded question, but what's your take on the homestead movement that seems to be rising up amongst traditional Christians online?
I don't know, that's another thing we're doing, because we mentioned canons before, and the necessity of the liturgy. So that's two other things we do, before we go into this, because this is a matter of discipline. We always tell people, go to liturgy, go to clergy, and we always tell people as laity, and sometimes not even laity yet, catechumens, we cannot tell you anything in matters of discipline. We cannot tell you what to do.
Mm-hmm.
We can teach you. We can teach you what we know, but we cannot tell you what to do, because that's not our role. So that's something we do. So we never really went into these questions, homesteading and so on. But yeah, it does seem that a lot of people have a calling for going back to nature. A lot of the population of France is centralized around cities, and a lot of the churches are linked to cities. I'm in the countryside. I don't have a church nearby. That's a problem. So we never really went into talking about homesteading and stuff like this. But of course, we often talk about living a healthy life, and you cannot do this when you're trapped into a maze. So ultimately, we see many people thinking about homesteading. There's been a rush, especially for more right-wing people towards the east in France in the recent years. So maybe in that sense, there will be it might be linked, but really we usually don't go there. We don't like to talk about discipline because we kind of feel out of place. We give some advice, as friends, but in terms of what is specifically Orthodox lifestyle, it can be in cities as well, I believe. Sure, if you look at early church history, it was centralized around cities. But no, yeah, there's a call to authenticity. Yeah, and maybe in that sense we can say that Orthodoxy is linked to more traditional ways to live. There's a call to authenticity. We link authenticity to be, something you do in the countryside. So maybe in that sense, yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's maybe a good way to phrase it. I wasn't even, I would absolutely agree that as Orthodox, living in a city isn't sinful or anything like that. But I'd say given the historical progression, living in, Constantinople in the 5th century is a little bit different than, say, New York City in the 21st or Paris in the 21st. And it seems like there is an immense spiritual war at hand right now. I feel like, again, this could just be me, and most of the people watching know that I'm not telling anybody to do anything. Most of, this channel is just a sort of my opinion putting out there to be challenged by those who maybe see differently. But I feel like the spiritual war at hand is becoming so incredibly obvious, and COVID is certainly one mechanism in way it's manifesting itself, and it just feels like there's this immense pressure. I mean, here in Indiana, just the difference between Marion County, which is the very center county of the state where the biggest city, Indianapolis, is, versus all the other counties outside of it, you can feel a difference. You can feel a difference in regards to sort of the businesses, the way people interact and feel about this stuff. So the way you framed in regards to a more authentic lifestyle, I think that's a really good way to frame it. That's a really good way to to kind of give a framework for it. So yeah, I agree, and so that's a really good response. I got a few super chats here directly for you in regards to questions. It says, "Where did you get the name Snek from?" That's by Eugen.
Okay. I used to be in some internet communities and used to do hoppy and snake memes. I had some friends who were libertarian, and I did some reading about this, and the name stuck. And I didn't want to change it because it sounded snappy, when becoming a Christian. I didn't want to change it, and I also liked the idea of the snake, the serpent, being something bad, which I was, but also a symbol of redemption, like the snake of Moses and so on. So yeah, I kept Snek. Don't really know why. And the red sun is it's a reference to Saint Vladimir Sviatoslavich, that we are celebrating today, who's probably one of the saints that inspired me most, because he has a story very similar to Clovis in France, who was sadly not the saint. And he was called the Red Sun, or the Nice Sun. So yeah, that's the origin story of my name.
Gotcha. Ephraim asked, again, threw in $5. Thank you very much, brother. Really appreciate it. He said, Snek, did you convert from Catholicism?
Okay. So I was born into a very culturally Catholic culture. I come from the east of France, in a place that's probably the most Catholic place in France, if I remember properly. So I come from this place, and we're sort of half Germanic. I come from Alsace-Lorraine, so it's very ingrained in the culture, because you have Protestant, in the next city. So I was raised in this culture. Family was mostly atheistic though, but I really had a good feel of the culture. My parents gave me the choice to get baptized as a Catholic later on, so I did when I was young. Didn't really think about it, and then as every person who goes to Catholic school, I became an atheist.
Right.
And because we were really badly catechized, and given a really bad understanding of Catholicism, and I became really a hardcore atheist for a while, and then I moved to their de facto religion, political ideologies, things that will, if a set of belief shapes your entire world, it's kind of a religion. So I moved to some of these ideologies, and then I realized that ultimately any political ideology is just the expression of a philosophy, and that any philosophy is just the expression of dogmatic beliefs, so religion. So I got interested into dogmatic stuff, into mysticism, and I became a perennialist. I especially studied the Sufi, but also some of the Buddhists and so on. And I realized that, be it in terms of dogmatics, being in terms of mysticism, being in terms of history, the only relevant religion is Orthodoxy. And here I am. But yeah, I studied Catholic Apologetics because I'm more part of this milieu, this culture, so I knew what was going on. And because when I came to the servers, they were a bit centered around apologetics with Catholics. So yeah.
Excellent.
That's my origin story.
Next question is from good OrthoBro Passios, he said, "Why do people deny the toll houses?" And I actually have an opinion on this because, I know multiple clergy that actually, and I've spoke with a couple priests who do not believe in the toll houses, and so, and yes, I always get messages. Yes, I have the departure of the soul. I have Father Sarah from Rose's books. I do not make public statements about toll houses anymore. So I've done my own research, but at least from the conversations I've had before, they believe that it doesn't coincide with the salvific power of Christ and what exactly was accomplished in the crucifixion and the defeating of death by death. Now, whether you agree with that or not, that's a different question, but their line of thinking is that this is more of a Russian tradition. Again, whether you believe in that or not, and I'm going to give you time to respond your own opinion, Snek. I just wanted to lay this out. Based on, this is my understanding from people I've spoke with, that this idea that somehow the demons can tempt you or remind you of your sins and almost throw you off your path to salvation after life. They believe that that doesn't coincide with their understanding of Orthodoxy. Now, I've spoke with other priests who absolutely do believe in toll houses, and I'm aware of the iconography used in the Dormition and Christ coming back for the Theotokos and all this stuff. But a lot of people that disagree with it would say that John of the Ladder, who's sometimes used to refer to this stuff, if you read his book, it appears he's talking about the aerial powers of this world, this life. Again, I know this is a debated topic. That's why I try to stay out of it, because it's a hot topic within Orthodoxy in general. And I am no expert, so I don't make any definitive opinion. But from my discussions, they see that this is often, again, those who might reject it, that's all I'm saying, they see the discussions of the powers of the air and stuff usually referring to something within this life, not the afterlife or the life to come. So that is my understanding. But Snek, what would be your response to why some people don't accept the toll houses?
The first question would be what kind of toll houses, because you have people who will give an account that especially legalistic, and that might not match with something you might find in the fathers, and then you have the people who will give a more metaphoric account. I think that's what Seraphim Rose does. So I think toll houses are straw man, but that's why I don't really go in there.
Yeah.
But what we can say for sure, if you look at what happened in the Council of Florence and the discussion in Florence between Saint Mark of Ephesus and the Latins, Saint Mark actually published homilies against purgatory. So many people say, "Oh, toll houses are a sort of purgatory." At least these homilies are not against purgatory, but the idea of a fire of purgatory. Meaning that you have to repent from. You have to repent in a temporal way from temporal sin, because this is predicated, on the Roman Catholic understanding of mortal versus venial sin. But he attests to some form, as do many other fathers, some form of post-mortem purification. Now the real question is it demons, angel? Do they metaphorically represent something? Well, angel and demons, they're not physical as well, so that's something we might have to keep in mind.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't be definitive, because some people will use the toll houses to justify things that are not orthodox. A lot of people, on the other hand, will strawman the toll houses to justify something that's not orthodox. Today, Origenism is very popular. Toll houses obviously go against universalism because it's judgment. So what I would say is that we can know for sure that there is some understanding of post-mortem purification for Christians. Now, what shape it takes, how many steps there are, I don't believe that's dogmatic. But yeah, so in that sense, I believe in the toll houses, and in that sense, we teach the toll houses, but we don't go too deep in there. and we tell people to tread carefully.
Yeah. I made the mistake of just reiterating the opinion that I had been encountered with the most, and that didn't go over too well online. So I just try to stay out of these because a lot of times you don't know how contentious these issues are until you're right in the center of it. And then you start getting angry messages from people privately denouncing you as a person. But yeah, I'd say this is a pretty contentious and hot topic. There's a lot of debate, and it's, from my understanding, there isn't a single dogmatic response or position for it. So just do your research. Just keep studying, read the books, learn theology, and the more opinions you encounter, not saying each one is equal in its validity, but just keeping an open mind and learning, I think, is the best way to approach this topic. So, Passios asked another question. He said, "Every Saints and Other Stories, #1 first book. Everyday Saints and Other Stories, #1 first book." I think he's recommending to everybody the book Everyday Saints and Other Stories. I do not have that, but thank you for the recommendation, brother. And do you have you read that, Snek?
No, but when it comes to what you recommend to people, we need to understand that there's three main sources of what the Orthodox life is. The first one is Scripture. The second one are the writings of the Fathers. And the third one, and it's clearly not the least important, are the life of the saints. In the life of the saints, you will find dogma made flesh. You will find these people who incarnate what we believe in. So life of the saint is especially important. Of course, sometimes you will see more, you will see stuff that are less sourced, do not rely on stuff that are as deep as what the church fathers say. But read the life of the saints. It's very, very important. It's for a reason. Every church is built on a saint. Every altar has a relic in it.
Right.
So a lot of people will only focus on the fathers, and we should be rounded up. We should also be good in terms of Bible and in terms of life of the saints. And sometimes you will find some real dogma in there.
Yeah, that's good advice.
Baptism by blood. Every martyr teaches us baptism by blood, and also a way to live, because our dogma or church, we do not separate dogma from being incarnated. We don't separate the liturgy from the rest of the things. That's the strength of Orthodoxy. So you cannot just read PDFs and canons, and you cannot just be theoretical. You need to incarnate this. There's a religion of incarnation. So life of the saints is especially important, and our goal is to try to become saints.
Yeah, there is so much reading within Orthodoxy. It's like, I think that was really great advice that you just gave. But I would say the life of the saints is probably one of my weaker dimensions as a Orthodox learner. Learning theology, reading sort of complex theological books, reading Scripture. Much more consistent at that than reading books on the life of the saints. But I think you're given a really good point in regards to the sort of lived experience and the lived dimension of Orthodoxy in the saints. So I think that was good advice, great response. Next question is by Eugen again. Thank you very, very much, brother. I really appreciate it. And he asked, ask Snek to get on Telegram. We've set up Orthodox groups in many languages which are attached to the directory, and we're looking for someone to host a French chat. There's a big demand for it. Also, good for promoting content. And I will second that. Eugen, depending on how you read his Germanic name of Owen, he has set up, again, German, Portuguese, Spanish, Serbian, of course, English. He lives on the island of Britain, but really, really growing Orthodoxy on Telegram, and he's been very successful. Now, I'm sure you're very busy, Snek, but he would be more than happy to reach out and try to set something up if you'd be interested in being a moderator or leading a French group on Telegram for Orthodoxy?
Yeah, I will think about it. Problem is, we're already supervising the Discord. We've tried to be present on Twitter.
I know.
We've tried to launch on Instagram, but again,
I know, dude. It's
the harvest is plentiful and not enough people to collect everything.
Agreed.
I don't think right now. I'm already taking time off working my my degree paper. But I'll think about it. I can recommend you. I can forward it to some people. But there's a demand, we know.
Yeah, if he, because I know he's very interested in establishing these specific language groups for Orthodoxy. If he were to reach out to you, say through like a Twitter DM, you'd be able to help him maybe connect with some fellow French speakers who would have some more free time to lead maybe a Telegram group like that. Because I'm with you, man. Staying up on the social media is a full-time job. It's ridiculous. I get it. It's good. It's a blessing. So you don't want to, you don't want to curse it or anything. But it is very time-consuming, much more than most people would probably realize.
Yeah, sure. I can connect you. I can link you to everybody, but it's taking a lot of time, all this, and that's great. There's a real demand, and I'm not surprised that Telegram works because people from the countercultures are considering the ancient faith. So yeah, it's good. We're gonna try to work on that. Just one thing: if you're on Telegram, be very wary of the very politicized so-called true Orthodox. These ones are very, very aggressive, especially on Telegram. They come from very borderline groups.
Oh, okay.
Use Telegram as a basis, but yeah, I'll try to do what I can.
Okay.
I will at least link you to people.
All right, and just FYI, he is the Orthodox Central account on Twitter that's always posting Orthodox news and stuff like that. But he will get in touch with you. He said he'll shoot you a DM, and so you guys can go from there. But anyways, man, thank you so much for today's convo. I think it was really helpful. You gave some great advice for apologetics, for how to encounter Catholics, Muslims, even Protestants in regards to a focus on Scripture, finding your point of connection, the overlap between a sort of Orthodox worldview, Orthodox theology, and whoever you're encountering, or really the foundation in regards to Muslims attacking their foundation in regards to Scripture, kind of showing pushing those pressure points and showing the cracks in their worldview, and then that will open up some more dialogue and to get them to an Orthodox frontum, an Orthodox worldview. So can you mention where people can find you? Again, thank you so much for spending time with us today, having a good conversation. Where can people find you? Where can they keep up with you?
I'm usually on my Discord. I'm also sometimes on Jay's Discord. So these are in my description. You can find it on my Twitter description. I'm also on Twitter at Snek the Red Sun. You usually can contact me there. Apart from that, not in a lot of places.
Okay. Yeah, and I have Eugen. He threw in your Twitter somewhere, but can somebody paste Snek's Twitter in the chat? That way it'd be easier for anybody who watches this video moving forward. They can just open up the chat by hearing it and then click his link and follow him there and check out all his information. So anyways, brother, thank you so much. God bless you. Hope things, again, kind of turn around in your neck of the woods over in France. It seems like all of us are facing a very similar beast, if you will, in regards to the culture, in regards to what's coming, it seems like. So God bless you. God bless your family. Hope everybody stays safe. And until next time.
Yeah.
So, all right. See you guys. Thank you, everybody who joined us live and was staying up with us in the chat. And until next time, as always, God bless.
Yeah. See you.